What's up, guys? It is Sam here, coming to you live from my bedroom. And I wanted to talk Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. In the polls, they're coming up as number 2 and 3 in terms of being able to win the Democratic nomination for president. So, we've got this awesome headset on here, and we are going to talk about that. But we're going to compare some of those polls, and just that to give you kind of context, and then we're going to dig in to their social to get understanding of the micro of what's happening on their social. And then we're going to step back and we're going to look much more macro. And we're going to look at the search trends on Google and the search trends on YouTube to see how the macro looks and compares to the micro being their social media. So, if this is your first time here, what's up? I'm Sam. And if you're returning, it's good to freaking see you. Now, with that being said, let's get into the video. Okay, so let's start with their very, very, I guess you could say, social things in terms of that's what they actually had to create, and that would be their website. So in a sense, that's like the very essence of being social because it's something that they created. From the human side of things, but we're going to actually get into social media in the traditional sense of that terminology. We've got Bernie Sanders' website, and by the way, I don't follow politics. I just started paying attention to some of the things which was happening in the last 24 to 48 hours. So this is just the first off going through and looking at this and telling you guys about it. And we can compare this to what they're actually telling us and see if their strategy aligns. I found some very interesting stuff. And it tells you almost the maturity level of the execution. Because at different degrees of execution, the level of detail taken into each individual fucking rabbit hole is much, much further along, if that makes sense. So, like, the intricate details of what makes a Swiss watch, how it's built, and the story along with that, right? Same thing goes with the development in terms of the tiny little details of people's social. But we're going to get into that. Okay, so now it's Bernie Sanders' website. We've got it up here. Pretty fucking basic. It goes up and down. There's a donate button in the top right-hand corner. But the main thing in the page is says not me, us. And it's a different font. And it asks for an email to basically a landing page to capture emails. And then Elizabeth Warren's is a interesting, we'll call it, a website that's shaped like a Tetris piece. Basically, you scroll down, and then once you go down a very short amount, like one page basically, then you start scrolling horizontally. So the thing on the side of your browser is going down, but the feed is just going across horizontally. And then at the last part of her page, it goes down again. I was like, what the hell is this page? That was like the primary thing that I actually noticed. Not the content, but just that specifically, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. I don't think it was that thoughtful enough to think that somebody on the internet would be talking about it like this right here. I don't think that much thought was into it, but I did find that kind of interesting at my first glance at her website. It also says throughout the journey on that website, going through it like this, there's a donate green bar below the browser or at the edge of the browser that says donate, and it has a bunch of different options. Whereas on the Bernie Sanders website, it just says donate, and there's one button. On her website, it has different dollar amounts. So it doesn't say donate or anything. It just has the dollar amounts. It's up to you. Elizabeth Warren doesn't accept contributions from PACs of any kind or federally registered lobbyists. That's interesting. I didn't know that, but that's the print above the dollar signs I was just reading for you guys. And then what I did after I took the first glance at their website was there's another website called Alexa. Alexa is a company owned by Amazon. However, it's not what you think it is. Alexa is not the website for Alexa, the AI of Amazon. They're two different things. They could be related somehow in the back end in terms of the data aggregation. However, Alexa, the website, is Amazon's company that ranks websites around the globe, and gives you some data on these websites, right? So one gauge to tell how a candidate would be doing, right, is doing the first thing, right, listening to polls. Now, if you want to get closer to the actual data, right, to understand like reality versus just like what somebody else told somebody else told somebody else and you heard it on like the television, from a poll that was done, the first step forward would be to go to the candidates' websites, right? So we go to each candidate's websites and you get a feel, right, in terms of this very interesting dialogue of me painting a picture of what their websites are like. And then from there, we take those websites and to go the next step to see what's going on, right? We can see what the polls tell us. We can see what's on their website. Now let's go further to understand like how we see things versus how maybe the market sees them, right? So we take those websites and we look them up on Alexa, which gives us some interesting statistics on these websites. So the engagement indicators on people's websites, according to Alexa, the first one listed, so this is probably one of the biggest impacts, is daily page views per visit. So we've got Bernie Sanders' website here, which has a 1.9 daily page views per visit. Now, when we come over to Elizabeth Warren's, she's got 2.8. So that's pretty substantial in terms of like a percentage when you think about it. I'm not sure how impactful that is because I don't understand that portion of it. But another thing which kind of is interesting is that the next gauge of engagement on websites, according to Alexa.com, is the time on the site per visit. And so for Bernie Sanders, it's 1 minute and 55 seconds. Now, Elizabeth Warren and her website is 2 minutes and 51 seconds. So you can think about time as the ultimate kind of currency in essence. Like if somebody can get more of other people's time, they can do whatever they want essentially. So the more and more time they can get, that is almost like the currency to be able to accomplish whatever you want to be able to accomplish. So another one way to gauge that is over time how a site ranks and where it's trending, right? If it's getting more popular or maybe it's getting less popular, less relevant in terms of the global view here. So we are going to take a look at the rankings on Alexa for these two sites on a global basis and on a United States basis. Starting with Bernie Sanders, his website is currently ranked just under 28,000th worldwide in terms of websites. So when you think about how many websites there are out there, to have one that's ranked 28,000th, I feel as though that is a pretty big accomplishment. However, when you look at the trend, this is over the past 90 days, worldwide, it has been just going down from the top toward the bottom over time. So just continually basically going down. And because it started 90 days ago as being 20,000th in terms of the ranking out of all the websites on the web, 20,000th globally. And to now be up to 28,000th. Like, that's a pretty substantial drop in terms of relevance of people searching for you on the internet, which is not a good sign, right? Now, when we go back over to Elizabeth Warren, hers currently is ranked at the 31st thousandth, right? So we've got Bernie Sanders at 28 and her at 31,000th. So his site is more popular in absolute terms, but hers has better engagement, right? Because she has 2.8 page views per visit, and he's got 1.9. And when they're on her site, they spend more time, right? Like, that's going to be an indicator. Also, if you have an increase in page views, that means people spend more time on every page. You know what I mean? Even if the amount per page drops from, say, like 1 minute, now it's down to like 50 seconds, but they go to 8 pages on average, like the total amount of time increases. And that's the same with Elizabeth Warren. She's got 2 minutes and 51 seconds on average people spend on their site per day, versus Bernie Sanders at 1 minute and 55 seconds. So there's definitely opportunity there. However, when you look at her site over 90 days, instead of going from the top left to the bottom right, meaning that growth is going down, hers is from the bottom left to the top right. Hers is up and to the right. So hers is just growing in popularity, which I thought was interesting. That also tells some, Alexa gives you information around where people were prior to going to Bernie Sanders' website or Elizabeth Warren's website, and then also what happens after they leave these websites. Meaning, once somebody leaves Bernie Sanders' website, where do they go next on the web on average? And so we have some data around that, which is kind of interesting. If we look at Bernie Sanders to start with beforehand, and I'm just not going to get too involved in a ton of the specifics of the sites, other than mentioning Bernie Sanders has YouTube as a site that leaves afterwards, and that's the only place that YouTube comes in as on either side in the top 5 for either one of these candidates. And I feel like YouTube is a place that needs to be is super valuable for candidates in 2019. Anyways, so Bernie Sanders has 32% of traffic coming from Google. In contrast, Elizabeth Warren has 50% of traffic coming from Google. So that just tells you the diversification difference between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, where he's got traffic coming from all over the place. But clearly she is more relevant because that's what she's searching. She's being her traffic's coming from, which in a few minutes I'll tie this into some more macro trends. Okay, so now the next thing that we want to move on to is their Instagrams. So let's pull up their Instagrams. again, just like the websites, right? We go look at the website, we try to understand, get a feel for them, what we think initially when we look at them, and then we step into the next stage to dive into the data along with whatever we're going to look at. So now we're going to look at Instagram for Elizabeth Warren, and then we're going to look at Bernie Sanders. And then this is going to be a little bit less, or just a little bit on each one of them. And then we're going to look at the data behind each one of these platforms. Okay, so now Elizabeth Warren. She currently actually has a story, which I don't think actually they both have stories, so they're both using Instagram stories, so right, like that's a huge part of Instagram is using Instagram stories, so that's good. In terms of followers, she's at 1.7 million and he's at 3.5. That makes sense, right? I feel like he's a little bit more relevant than she is in time, right? Because you can capture moments of relevance, and that kind of just is a total tracker of that, I guess, over time. And it's pretty sticky. Like, people don't leave after they found you, even if they don't consume your shit afterwards. So on Elizabeth Warren's, she's got her name, obviously, and she reads U.S. Senator, Massachusetts. I think this is former teacher and law professor, wife, mom, and then she gives her children's names along with CF, PB, I have no idea what that means, grandmother, and Oki. I'm not sure what that means. Official account, 2020 presidential campaign. So I'm assuming she's trying to tag another another page here. However, this is where you come into the experience of what I was mentioning earlier. When you're trying to tag somebody, assuming that that's what they were trying to do, or maybe they're just trying to say it's the official, even though there's a green check mark. Either case, like, if you're trying to tag somebody, and that's what the purpose of you mentioning this here, then there clearly needs to be an @ symbol. So there's some type of juvenile thinking. Or if the nature was other in terms of they're just saying, hey, this is the official account, 2020 presidential campaign, if that's what they're just trying to say. I think there's also a level of juvenile or just not super developed thought process, because I think that, and please correct me down below in the comments if you do not agree, if you have other thoughts, but I think that having a check mark on Instagram is more valuable than a lot of people may think, and that is not something, in my opinion, that needs to necessarily be in the description if that was the purpose. So in either case, I think that there is potential opportunity there. So you look at her page, she's posting consistently, it looks like, and she's using Instagram TV, so that's good. Some visual stuff. I'm not going to inspect that or really look at that. We're going to stick to more of the data. The last 3 posts we've got here, we've got 215, 225, 265 in terms of comments, and 12,000, 14,000, and 15,000 in terms of likes. So that's interesting over the last 3. Now, the link in her profile takes you to a it says Medium, which is just medium.com is a website where you can create your own blog and that kind of thing. So takes you to a website called Medium where they have the name of the account is Team Warren, so this is clearly her team. And this is just the blog post that they did about it, but at the top it says Election 2020. And I'm not sure, but by the way, if anybody knows Elizabeth Warren or anybody on their team, you should share this video with them, because they're trying to fucking raise money. They have the wrong link in the description. I could do some consulting for you guys, save you a little bit of money, and or make you way more effective at what the fuck you're doing online. Anyways, I found that interesting that there's no link to trying to raise money. Maybe she's not trying to raise money, but we do hear that from other candidates. So either it's a missed opportunity to raise money, or it's just not on the radar of like relevance. I feel like I'm trying to see, maybe it's raising money is just not important. She has like an abundance of money. I don't know. I feel like that's not the answer. I feel like raising money at this point is probably well established as being like one of the more important things to do. If you can raise the money through donations, you can do a lot of things, and I think everybody is very aware of that. That's what my thought process would be about not having a link to fucking getting donations on your Instagram. So first thing, just went over to Bernie Sanders' page. The link is the first thing that I looked at, and there's a link to a site to donate. That's interesting. Okay, so we've got his name here: U.S. Senator for Vermont and candidate for President of United States. Okay. Again, he's got the more followers, about double the followers, and he's got the link to donations. The last couple posts here, the last 3 posts, one was to IGTV, which had 900 comments. The other, that was IGTV, 900 comments, and then 7,000 comments, holy fuck. And then something else had 300. So the 300 is much closer to Elizabeth Warren's. So there's definitely feels that like with double the following, well, it's hard to say. But it is good to see he's using Instagram TV. His layout on his page, I just like the actual coloring. So if you look at their page from just a very visual, and I'm not going to touch on the visuals too much because I feel like that's very, very subjective, but it is a part of it. The visuals on his page are just much more clear and pronounced when you go on the page, where like when you put up the below that you can save stories and put them in below like your posts on Instagram. You know, there's the like your headshot, and you can do your stories up here.